Welcome back. So, yesterday we talked about playing down to BR2, and I featured an American game in the background in Ardennes. Today, we are going to kind of continue on that same idea, that same topic, and we're going to look at BR3 Germany. And I've been playing around with it a little bit more since yesterday, and honestly, playing BR3 Germany is pretty good. In some respects, you could argue that it's the greatest skill expression in the game because you're going to have to play up to BR5. Personally, I don't take the game that seriously, but I can see why people would want to play BR3 in other nations that are worse off, like, say, America, for example, because I could see where you'd find that challenge. For me, I really like the BR2 and BR3 equipment, and that's the big draw for me. So one of the most disappointing things for me in the merge thus far has been the random nature of BR3, and because of that, it dissuades me from really wanting to play a whole lot of BR3. And depending on the nation, and depending on how reliable your team is, and whether you're playing with other people, that can change the scales there, but in general, the way that I looked at BR3 was that it was too much of a crapshoot. Having the chance of going up to BR5, which was perfectly playable, but undesirable, and at the same time, also having the potential to play down to BR3, it just sounds like too much variance. Like, you're effectively choosing to play in the old campaign system, but without ever having the opportunity to be the top dog. Because in the old campaign system, right, if you spent time on a campaign, if you dedicated yourself to it, you could be the top dog and you could always be top tier. But effectively what you're doing with BR3 is committing to playing the middle of the roads Normandy or the middle of the roads Berlin. But, as I mentioned before, some of my favorite equipment in the game is at BR3, and this goes beyond just Germany. But the Bars and the Thompsons for America really start to get into the swing of things at BR3, the M1 Garand. It's really the iconic BR range for America. But even as Germany, it's where you start getting the Gewehr 41, it's where the MG34 is, the Panzerfaust. It used to be where the MP40 was, but now it's home to the MP35 and the ZK383 and the Berettas. And it's also where you get access to most of the Panzer IVs with long guns. So, my buddy and I decided to sit down last night and give BR3 a go. And we still played down a few times, but the match that I threw up in the background is a match where we were bottom tier. And honestly, it was a pretty good match. I really appreciated the Americans leaving my Panzer IV-J alone. I know that if I had been playing BR5 Germany and I pulled out my Tiger II, I would have been bombed, rocketed, and shot from every direction 8 times over. But I appreciate the American team deciding not to shoot my poor little Panzer IV-J while I, you know, put warheads on foreheads from across the valley. But I think BR3 is actually a lot of fun as Germany. Your gear is good enough that if you have to play up, you can actually compete pretty strongly. And yes, the Americans are going to bring their 100-round belts on their 1919s, but the fire rate's not tremendous. They're going to bring their hard-hitting damage with their Thompsons, and they'll have the drum mags, but it is what it is. I don't think the Thompson's that horrifying. It is a good weapon, mind you, but, you know, it's a submachine gun. I feel like a lot of other submachine guns can compete with it pretty well. The M2 carbine can be absolutely devastating. You know how Allied tanks are, though. They're about as competitive as anything else that you're gonna see. So I'm not too worried about them. They're kind of thin-skinned, even if some of their guns can be a little bit nasty. It's the Allied air power where they really stand out. But I think we got kind of lucky and we weren't getting annihilated by P-47s that game. But at least on the ground, I think you can compete fairly well, even if you have to play up as Germany. So I had a good time with it. So I guess we should get into what I've been running. So I have a Panzer IV-J on. There are other options. I was thinking about running a Panzer IV-G or Panzer IV-F2 because I have the Battle Pass Panzer IV-F2 from Tunisia with the flag on the roof, and I just think it looks cool. But I ended up going with the Panzer IV-J because in a lot of my low BR games playing as Russia and as America, I've run into Panzer IV-Js, and it seems like they do alright. Now the spaced armor around the turret doesn't seem like it really helps out a whole lot, but the tank seems like it performs fine, so I threw it on. I might swap it out in the future. The thing is, at BR3, if you're playing up into BR5, I don't think it matters what tank you bring. I think all of the BR3 tanks are going to be pennable from every direction by every Russian and American tank that you run into at BR5, so it's kind of a moot point. So I may end up swapping it out for the F2 just for style points. I guess when you play down into BR 1, 2, 3, though, it does kind of matter, because a lot of the earlier anti-tank weapons are going to be less effective. Like, the AT rifles, the spaced armor probably does actually give you protection against, and the upgraded front armor over the F2 is probably beneficial. So I think that's where it matters. As far as the plane, I went with the BF-110 G2, which is a fantastic plane. It flies fast enough. It turns surprisingly well for a plane this big. You've got 4 Werfer rockets, which, if you're shooting at infantry, can absolutely devastate them. And then you still have the 30mm cannon, which, if you come down on top of enemy tanks, you can actually go through the roof of a lot of them, but I'm pretty sure it fires high explosive shells, or at least it looks like there's pretty big explosions on the ground whenever I use it, so you can also take out infantry. I've been somewhat successful with it. Really the draw is the rockets, but admittedly I also have the Battle Pass BF-110 from Moscow, and that carries 2 250 kilo bombs, and that could also be a very attractive alternative. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them. You do have a choice with the Ju-87 as well, the D3 with the 3 250 kilo bombs. The only thing that I don't care for with the Ju-87s is most of them have 7.92 machine guns, and that means that you're going to be really ineffective against other planes if you have to fight them. The D5 does have 20 mils, but you're trading out the wing 250 kilo bombs for 50 kilo bombs. You still get the multi-drop potential, but it's up to you. I still think the BF-110 is probably the way to go. It's just which BF-110 variant you prefer, whether you want the C7, the F2, or the G2. It really doesn't make a difference. There is one of the C variants that has a different underslung cannon. I'm trying to remember exactly which one it is, but I wouldn't take that one in particular, personally. I think it's a C6. It has a 30mm Mark 101, so it's like a shorter barreled 30mm. But the problem with it is that it doesn't get any other ordnance. So, personally, I would avoid that one. But otherwise, you pretty much have your choices open. There's also a few BF-109s that carry 50 kilo bombs, and you can take a look at those. The E7U2, I see a lot of people fly, and I think that's BR2. I think there's some of the F series as well that carry bombs. As far as infantry, though, now mind you, I do have several premium squads on here. I've been really missing using them because they're some of my favorite premium squads in the game. So I have them on here, but you could use other alternatives. So, starting from the top, I have the MG13 Premium Squad, and they are one of my favorite in the game. Not only do their uniforms look awesome, and actually it's one of the squads that carries my German officer sword, but the MG13 with the drum mag, I really like it. I miss being able to use it in Moscow. I kind of wish it was BR2, but I can understand why it's BR3. It's not the most wieldy of light machine guns, but it's 25-18 for its recoil stat, so it does have a lot of horizontal, but if you can deploy it, it's very good, and if you hip fire it, it almost acts like a giant assault rifle. And the 75 round magazine is phenomenal on it. I haven't really kitted out my BR3 squads too much, so most of them don't have mines or anything like that. Most of them just have what they come with plus flasks and pistols. So, like, they have C96s and flasks, and they've got the large backpacks that came with. Moving on, I have the bar squad. They were just available in the recent sale, but I've had them for a long time, basically since they came out. And on them, I have an engineer with the Pavesi M42. It's a BR3 Battle Pass weapon that I picked up a long time ago in Tunisia, and I'm a little bit surprised it's not BR2, but I figured I ought to get some use out of it and throw it on this squad, so that works out nicely. Then I have a tech tree squad with 3 of the FN Bar 1930s. Again, they're BR3 weapon that I have. I figured I'd throw them on. They perform very well at BR3. I've been tempted to put them on my half-track squad and even to use them at high BR, but so far I haven't. They also have Gewehr 41s, and the medic has one of the FG-15s. I probably should swap it out for a proper submachine gun, but it's kind of a cool gun, so I've been leaving it on there. Plus, they're more of a mid-range squad, and I think the FG-15 performs pretty well in the mid-game. I also have my MP40/1 squad on. I mentioned yesterday, I was really excited to see that it moved down to BR3, and it performs amazingly. I love being able to just rack the bolt and have another 32 rounds ready to go. I highly recommend them. Even though there's only 4 of them in the squad, I think they do alright having an engineer with a Gewehr 41, and I think at BR3, because of the way that low BR plays, I think you're doing alright having extra range in your squad, because when you do play down, the matches are usually slower, and if you get on somewhere like Tunisia or the Ardennes, the maps are pretty open, so having something that can reach out and touch people a little bit is nice to have on a squad that otherwise can't really do that. Moving on, I have one assault squad with Beretta M1s. I've been using this squad in basically this loadout since Tunisia, and I have no plans to change them. Again, they don't have the best gear. They only have like small backpacks and small ammo packs. They have a ZB-26 with them. They have the Gewehr 41, the Panzerfaust. They're engineer machine gunner AT. I like them. Can't complain. I have another assault squad on here that they have MP35s, and they're also engineer, machine gunner, and AT. And for their machine gun, they have an MG34. So we're basically covering all the bases. If it's a BR3 machine gun, we have it in one of these squads. Same with the submachine guns for the most part. I think the only one we're missing is the other Italian one, the 3842, which I have one that I could stick somewhere, I just don't know where to put it. I probably could put that on in place of the VG-15 if I really wanted to. We have a flamethrower team. They all have Gewehr 41s. They have MP35s for their 2 assaulters, and they have 1 engineer. These guys, they all have Lugers. They're one of my lucky squads that I think I picked up their Lugers in Stalingrad. This actually might be a Stalingrad squad now that I think about it. Most of my BR3 squads I kind of just stuck on. I didn't really customize them a whole lot. Again, they all have flasks. They don't have mines. It's a big silver investment getting mines up and running, and I don't know if I really want to buy another set of mines, even though I really like using mines. And then we have a communication squad with an assaulter, with the ZK-383, an MG-34 on a machine gunner, and everybody else has Gewehr 41s. The comms guys themselves have Gewehr 41s and Kar 98s. So they do have a little bit of ability to reach out and touch. I could have pretty much given them whatever for rifles. I'd be tempted to actually throw the VZ-24s on because they do a little bit more damage to complement the Gewehrs, since you use the Gewehr up close and use that further away. I'd also be tempted to throw on something different like a mass rifle or a VG2 maybe, because then they get something that uses a different ammo type, so if you run out with the first rifle, you still have the second rifle. But that's probably what I'll do. I'll probably put VG2s on them. Either that or the mass rifle, but the VG2's magazine fed, which is kind of nice. I'm really tempted to make a whole rifleman squad of VG2s. I know it wouldn't be the most competitive thing in the world, but being able to reload with a box mag on a bolt-action rifle, even though it's still a bolt-action rifle, at BR3 I think I could make it work, because when you play down, you're getting a 10-round bolt-action rifle, kind of like the Lee Enfield, but you're probably getting a faster reload on it. I just haven't played with them enough to really know if that actually performs as well as I imagine it might. The Gewehr 41s for me, sometimes they feel a little bit unreliable. They do really well and this goes for the Gewehr 43 as well. They do really well in short range, and they do really well if you're clearing a room because you can tap fire it pretty quickly. But I feel like the shot dispersion, I feel like they're a little bit inaccurate. But in general, I think Germany plays up really well, and this lineup's been working well for me. There's other things that you could use. Like, you could run a whole assault squad with M3842s, and it would probably be more competitive than the MP35 or ZK383, but because I haven't really used either of those a whole lot in the past, I wanted to use them. I haven't really used the 3842 either, but the 3842 is basically a Beretta M1 that's slightly different. It, instead of having a folding stock, it's got a full stock. The Panzerfaust 60 is honestly the gold standard of BR3 AT weapons, and it can basically take out anything in the game. The only downside to it is that it's harder to aim than, say, a Panzerfaust 100, but, I mean, if you play with it enough and you learn how to aim it, it's kind of nice. I'd be really tempted to swap out somebody in this, maybe one of the assault squads, maybe one of the machine gun squads, I'm not sure. They both basically fill the same role for like a mortar team. Or sniper team for that matter. I don't really use snipers a whole lot, but every once in a while they're kind of cool to have, so I might play around with that. The G55 might also be a really nice addition. I guess it's BR4. That's too bad. Yeah, it's foldered in BR3 for research, but it's a BR4 flame, so maybe not. The ZB26 is a pretty good tech tree alternative as kind of an assault light machine gun. Its recoil stats really aren't ideal, being 35-20, but if you've got enough perks where you can take horizontal and a little bit of vertical, I think it becomes very usable. You don't really need reload speed on it because it's a box magazine, and 3.2 seconds is kind of slow for a reload, but it's still better than running around with like a belt-fed light machine gun at you know, 5 to 6 seconds. I don't have the half tracks on right now because I just didn't want to play around with swapping out their weapons, and since I still play BR5 quite a bit for Germany. But that being said, I think that they're probably more ideal to run than some of the squads on here. Like, if I was going to recommend what to run to somebody, if you're a free-to-play player, pick a tank or a plane, whatever you think is more valuable to you. I think if you're going to play at BR3, planes are going to be more valuable because if you have to play up, your planes will play up much better than your tanks will, because when a tank plays up, you still have to deal with the same armor, and you still have to deal with the same gun, so you have the same penetration, the same sized explosive shell. When a plane plays up, if you have, like, perception, or whatever the perk's called, on your pilot so you can see the other planes from further away and get the marker to pop up, or if, you know, you're Mr. Eagle Eyes and you can spot them and get the drop on them first, it doesn't really matter what plane you're in, there's a really good chance you're going to win the engagement. And then couple that with planes being the great equalizer, you can effectively take out whatever you see on the ground, be they infantry, tanks, whatever, with a plane. So I would recommend you take a plane. If I would probably recommend the BF-110 with the two 250 kilo bombs, just because you're going to have an easier time taking out tanks and they'll perform well against infantry. But personally, I've been using the G2. But I think it's personal preference. Then I would take one assault squad, maybe more, it's up to you. And then I would fill your next slot with, well, I'd probably take 2 assault squads. You could either take 2 assault squads or take 1 assault squad and 1 machine gun squad, and then your last slot is a flex squad, and I'd put some sort of utility in there. Whether you want a flamethrower squad, an AT squad, a mortar squad, or a radio operator squad, it's all up to you. And admittedly, it also comes down to the squad compositions that you run. So if you've got AT guys in all of your other squads, I don't think you need an AT squad. Or if you've got radio operators in all of your squads, I don't think you need a radio squad. It does offer you more flexibility because you can call in smoke and you can call in airstrikes. But if you've got one squad with one radio operator and you just call in artillery on cooldown with it, you're still getting most of the benefits of having a radio squad. So that last slot's really up to you. As far as the other 2 slots that I mentioned, where you can either run machine gunners or you can run assaulters, again, I think it really comes down to personal preference. I think assaulters do better in offense, but machine gunners do better in defense, and depending on what you have, if you have the FN bars, I think they flex really well and they split that happy medium. So if you have 3 of them and you can run a whole machine gun squad with the FN bars, I might actually consider taking that over an assault squad. The MG34 is a fantastic light machine gun, and it does alright when you're attacking, but it is still kind of cumbersome, and you know, you have to play around knowing that you're going to be a little bit slower and you're going to be a little bit sluggish aiming it, and so on and so forth. As far as rifles go, I would go Gewehr 41, but you could run grenade launchers on a squad. They are BR3, just know you're going to be less effective in close range. The trade-offs are pretty fair. You could even mix squads. That's probably the best way to run them, is to run Gewehr 41s on all of your specialists, so like your flamethrower guys, or your engineers, or your radio operators. And your radio operators, I guess, you could actually give you could give them a grenade launching rifle, and you could give them a normal rifle, like a Gewehr 41. But you could run like an assault squad where your AT guy had a grenade launcher. I don't know if the grenade launching AT rifle is BR3 or 4, but I think they're both BR3. I'm gonna look and see if I have one, but assuming that they're BR3, you could run the AT grenade launcher just for funsies on there. Yeah, it looks like it's BR3, so you could run that if you wanted to on him, and then run like a Gewehr 41 on your engineer, and then if you've got like a machine gunner or whatever, you put a machine gun on him, or a radio operator, then put one of each. And it's up to you. Variety is the spice of death, after all. So, having variety and flexibility gives you versatility. But, yeah, I think you can make really effective lineups that are able to play up. I know some people really like bringing lots of impact grenades so that they can play up. Personally, I think it's incredibly degenerate, but, you know, you play however makes you happy. As for me, I told you all about my lineup. I think it's a pretty cool lineup. I think it's pretty fun. I might switch things up, and if I do, I might get back to you guys and let you know. But I've been pleasantly surprised with BR3. I haven't had to play up nearly as often as I thought that I would, and when I have played up, it's honestly been really fun. They've been really competitive games, so I really can't complain. So, you guys let me know how your games have gone. Let me know if you guys like running BR3, especially if you like playing BR3 as somebody other than Germany. But yeah, as per usual, get out there, kick ass, take names, and win your games.